flags you see on the screen are the flags of some places. I'm not going to call them countries right off the bat because there's some people who would dispute that they are countries. Of course, that begs the question, what the hell is a country? Uh, that can get a bit contentious, but I would submit that the best definition, or if you will, synonym for a country, is a sovereign state. Now, what is that? Well, sovereignty means that a government entity, some group with the power to enforce its will upon everyone who lives within a piece of the Earth's surface, has the ability to exercise that power. They can actually make the people within the territory they claim do what they want. If they can't do that, then it's not sovereign. It has nothing to do, and there are people who would tell you, countries, I heard this so many times in so many poli-sci classes from these dipshits, liberals, and when I say liberal, I mean liberal in the international relations sense, who believe in, for some reason, believe in like believe that international organizations and international opinion matters. International law matters. So if the UN doesn't say that a government, a state, is actually a country, then it's not a country. Recognition is always listed. You will see this all over academia. You will see this. Recognition by other countries is listed as a requirement for a country to exist. That's bullshit. It's total horseshit. Okay? What people think about whether a country should exist does not actually dictate whether a country exists or not. Okay? If you think a country shouldn't exist and you say, that's not a country, I don't recognize the sovereignty of that government on this plot of land, well, okay, fine, but if they control the land and you don't, or nobody else does, then your opinion doesn't matter. Okay? It doesn't matter. If you want your opinion to matter, then you need to go in there and destroy that government and take over the territory yourself or give it to somebody else. Otherwise, your words don't mean anything. And that is why the places on the screen right now are in fact countries, even though they aren't recognized. It doesn't matter that China, and therefore everyone else because money, says that Taiwan isn't a country. It doesn't matter that no one thinks it's a country. It is a country. Chinese law doesn't apply there. Taiwanese law applies there. Okay? There's no Chinese soldiers there. There's no Chinese cops. There's only Taiwanese soldiers and Taiwanese cops. Okay? At the end of the day, what matters is who controls the territory. Who is standing there with weapons preventing other groups from being able to come in to that piece of territory and impose their will. Opinion doesn't matter. It's all just words. Okay? Now, admittedly, there are some questionable cases. For instance, what about Luhansk, Donetsk, Abkhazia, South Ossetia? These are places that claim to be independent territories. But they weren't really, in the sense that, especially in the case of Luhansk and Donetsk, you could make the argument they're not really sovereign countries. They're just a smokescreen, a puppet, a cover for what is essentially a Russian invasion of Ukraine. And you could make the same argument for Abkhazia and South Ossetia. It's just they're just covers for a Russian annexation of those parts of Georgia. But even so, okay, and I've also said that it requires who's standing there with weapons. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have people standing there with weapons preventing people from coming in. It just means that nobody else's, people with weapons are coming in to stop you. For instance, Iceland. Iceland doesn't have an army. Okay? They are totally defenseless, in theory. Anybody could just walk in there and take over the place. There's no one to stop them. But they're a sovereign country nevertheless. Why? Because nobody goes in there and stops them. Nobody's gone in there and taken the place. Granted, that's because it's part of NATO. But in theory, I mean, the U.S. could just take over the place if they wanted to. There's no one to stop them. But for political reasons, and you could argue cultural, moral reasons, and frankly just not giving a shit reasons, nobody cares about taking over Iceland, even though it's totally defenseless. So, the government in Iceland, and therefore Iceland itself, is a sovereign country, despite being totally defenseless, simply because nobody cares to try and make it not sovereign. This means also places like Palestine, yes, nobody recognizes it as a country. Well, some places do, but it's not sovereign. At least the West Bank isn't. The Israelis do whatever they want there. But Gaza is sovereign. And again, it's not because the Israelis couldn't take over Gaza. It's because they don't care. They don't want to go through the trouble of taking away Gaza from Hamas. So they just leave it there. They blockade it, they surround it, but they leave it there, and inside Gaza, Hamas runs the show. So it's not just about who is the most powerful, because theoretically that would mean that only the most powerful country on earth is actually sovereign. It's about whether that power is exercised and over who. If you don't exercise your power to take away the sovereignty of another country, then that country is still sovereign, even though in theory you could take it away. It's not about recognition. It's about whether you exercise your power to take away the sovereignty of another group. And if you don't, then that group, that government, that state is sovereign.